Hi everyone, welcome to part 4 of our ESG Masterclass series. This is a certified masterclass, which means that if you attend all 5 sessions from November 2022 to March 2023, you can take an assessment and then you will receive a certificate after part 5 in March. We're very excited to see you on the other side. The webinar is hosted by Benchmark Digital. For over 2 decades now, Benchmark Digital's cloud-based digital EHS and ESG platform has helped businesses manage safe and sustainable operations worldwide and digitally transform their environmental health and safety, sustainability, supplier, and product stewardship programs. And that brings us to part 4 today. Now, as we have brought up before, Benchmark conceptualized this masterclass series to help our community of business leaders understand ESG better. And so far, we've looked at the E, the environment in ESG, the S, which was the social. And today we're diving deeper into a very central aspect and a driving force of ESG, which is governance. And as we know, corporate governance and debates around the nature and purpose of the corporation are not new, but ESG is offering us a fresh lens to be able to look at governance and re-look at the same questions that we've been asking for so long. Now, we're here today to decode how governance takes shape under ESG as organizations act in the best interest of their stakeholders. Just a minute. Yeah, here's our ESG Masterclass team. Now, a lot of you have been attending this series from part 1, so you already know our team. But just quick reintroductions here. We have with us Mr. Shankar Rajagopalan. He is an ESG expert and Masterclass lead. And Shankar is an environment, health, safety, quality, and sustainability expert with more than 36 years of experience. He's currently an ESG consultant and has extensive experience working as the previous head at Granules India Limited, ESG head, and in EHS and sustainability roles at Dr. Reddy's, Pfizer, Tata Projects, and Sterling & Wilson. Thank you, Shankar, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Also part of our team are our digital ESG experts. We have Chandan Tiwari. He is currently the Associate Director, APAC Subscriber Development at Benchmark Digital Partners. He is a qualified EHS practitioner with 13 years of experience in digital transformation, business integration, environmental, social and governance, sustainability, occupational health, safety, and environment management system implementation. We also have with us Ayush Vidyadharan. He is a manager, subscriber development at Benchmark Digital. He's a mechanical engineer by profession, and he holds a master's in EHS with experience working with ports and logistics and manufacturing firms prior to joining Benchmark. Ayush is today a GRI trained sustainability professional with expertise in GRI, the GHG protocol, and BRSR. Now, Benchmark Digital is hosting this webinar in collaboration with Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Yeah, and here's a brief look at all the parts, part 1 to 3 that we've been through, and part 4, we're on part 4 today. So please block your calendars and get ready for part 5 after this. A quick note before we proceed, the same housekeeping rules as we looked at the previous times as well. So we're really excited to hear all of your thoughts and questions. You can see the chat box on your screen, enter any questions you may have in there, and our experts will go ahead and address them at the question and answer session, which we have at the end of the webinar. Now, Shankar, please go ahead. I will stop sharing my screen.
Wonderful. Good day, everybody. Wonderful to have you all. We've got a global audience, and I'm sure that will be a wonderful session. Thank you, Alicia, for curating the masterclass. Thank you for leading this journey into taking us navigating through the ESG universe as we speak. So all of us have our favorites, right? If you ask you which is your favorite bottom line, you will have various thoughts there. And I guess a lot of people felt it's all about the people, right? The planet will survive, governance, even if there is issues, you do get back and it's about the people who, is the most critical, bottom line. So today we're looking at the G in ESG, the governance, and very topical, very relevant, at least back home in India, where we just after the prescriptive and predictive analytics on the budget, all of us, there is this analysis paralysis, finding out what went wrong or what went right. And also the G20, the year when you're hosting it, and of course, oversubscribed IPOs. So the factors in G look at with specific, as always, industry case studies, so you could connect with each of these themes. The governance factors focus around the ethical business practices. The fulcrum of these is the corporate integrity and compliance, that's the foundation of ethics and compliance. It also focuses on empowered, diverse, and inclusive boards. We spoke about DEI in social. We'll do a quick recap. Focusing on governance, risk management. It's all about managing risk. And of course, responsible tech, data privacy, information security, shareholder engagement and rights, and executive collaboration and board independence. So this is the theme for today. And like Lisa said, 2 pop-in questions there. Before we deep dive into the third bottom line, let's do a quick recap on the social that we did last month. The various social factors that you have, and of course, about the people, like we said, occupational health and safety, diversity, equity, inclusion, human rights, labor practices. So what we said, of course, is, yes, we all agreed that reporting on social is challenging. It does include a lot of management of reputational risks. We spoke about a couple of examples of protests, and you can see that something that is what is a showstopper in a lot of business there. In our effort to expose you to the best of frameworks, the relevant frameworks, we took you through the UN Global Compact, the Sustainable Developmental Goals, the relevant aspects of the GRI, SASB, and the BRSR, especially the social metrics here. And we ended with digital tools that Ayush explained how they could help tackling these challenges of reporting on social here. So what, friends, is the governance, and why do they say that governance is most critical? As they said in the word of Masaki Imai, the most critical element of transformation is top management commitment. And we asked him, what's the second? He repeated that. And the third, he repeated, it's that. So governance is what drives everything that we do. So the G in ESG refers to the governance factors of decision making, because when there's a policy and an approach, it's normally signed and outlined by the leadership here. So ESG plays a big role in also the ENS strategy and execution there. So that's why the governance factors that you mentioned are so critical and could be the foundation of ESG and business. So I guess these are the ones. They also scope things like executive performance and stakeholder engagement and rights, which we also in some ways understood in the last webinar on social here. So let's look at each of these pillars of the governance and try and understand from the context with a couple of examples there. So ethics, integrity, and compliance. So there are 4 pillars here, and this is a corporate governance program that focuses, like we said, on ethics and compliance. It's both in the letter and the spirit. There are 4 pillars. The first 2 are pretty self-explanatory. Pillar 1 commits to ethics and integrity beyond compliance. It's not just about ticking in the box, it's going beyond. And of course, strengthening corporate culture with incentives for continuous improvement and learning. Pillar 3 is the one that talks about, actively shaping the future of business integrity with opportunities for businesses, including tech-based, and we spoke about some part of this. At the end of this session, we'll also give you some ways of leveraging the governance. It also speaks about data-intensive innovations, how we can enhance the effectiveness of the business's compliance systems, how we can digitalize compliance complete system to help us in mining information, to identify the risks of the supply chain and address the critical pain points in a leading manner proactively, to strengthen the autonomy of compliances. So that's how it works there. So using tech, and that's what the third pillar talks about, increases through analytics, insights from risk assessments and investigations. It helps develop targeted reporting, training also, tailoring this accordingly with guidance, and ensuring audits are more focused, better internal and external reporting. So pillar 3 is the one that has a lot of context again to what we're talking of today. The 4th pillar, it talks of the supportive collective action. This is the focus of collective action on enhancing anti-corruption practices, how this can include voluntary and public anti-corruption programs and tools for smaller companies in the supply chain to also, which are less resourceful. How do you ensure that there's a capacity building that works? We gave a couple of examples of how industries do that, but that's very important, and that's how this particular sub-pillar works very effectively here. A couple of data points out here. 57 of the business leaders in the APAC consider regulatory enforcement and investigations as the top ESG risk here. This is critical for board members, especially, and all of us to declare all conflicts of interest. And these are particularly gray areas to understand the shades of gray, right? It's not all black and white here. So this is the core pillar, ethics, integrity, and compliance. There are challenges for legal compliance and privacy across. And here is what this is a report that comes in from Gartner in 2022. So this report is designed to offer legal and compliance leadership teams a better understanding of the emerging trends and insight into what the peers are focusing on in the last years. And the responses came in from around 140 legal and compliance leaders across all major industries there. So what's very obvious here is that this year has brought to light a focus on heightened legal, regulatory, and social uncertainty. And in the times of what we're talking about, legal leaders must rethink how they provide critical services and strategic guidance there. So this survey really gives up a lot of insights into what are the top challenges for the legal domain out here and what the legal leaders need to do. So how can companies really improve their corporate integrity agenda? What is it that they can do apart from providing access and doing fraud and corruption risk assessments, to combine various checklists and frameworks to have a strong foundation with integrity culture, and to also support whistleblowers. Now, whistleblowing is something that you heard of. It's something that is, and you see the graph out here. The graph actually, if you look at it, is a 3-year, year-on-year trend on how much protection is normally offered to whistleblowers. And the trend you can see is very interesting. At the bottom, you see that Middle East, India, and Africa, and Southeast Asia has a very good progress, almost 40 to 39%. You can see that that is how the whistleblowers are well protected there. And you can see across the West, it's not as high. So the degree to which whistleblowers offer protection in the organizations is an essential benchmark of integrity culture. And employees at all levels need to be confident that although every survey is anonymous, they should report without fear of negative consequences, and that violations always bear consequences, as you know. So open and transparent reporting, you really need to encourage that. This is one important learning from here. Also, one of the dominant reasons from the same survey says that respondents feel that if there's no action that is taken from the feedback, 38% say that this is largely one of the reasons. So if you feel that if you take a survey and there's going to be no progress on that, there's going to be no reporting, it's just a tick in the box survey, there won't be any there won't be any essence in doing this survey there. So that's an interesting outcome, and you can see some of the data points here reflect the trends. One of the companies that we have looked at, and I have been part of their supply chain initiatives, UltraTech Cement, part of the Aditya Birla Group. One of the best case studies there of a great group framework. The sustainability framework looks at responsible stewardship, strategic stakeholder engagement, and future proofing. In a very phased manner, the UltraTech Cement has taken this forward. And on the specific front, there's been no breach in the code of ethics. The way it has been explained to the suppliers is something that is unparalleled. The context, the cases, the way they simulated the various the case studies that they presented, the way they have animated it is wonderful there. It's no wonder that in 2020, UltraTech won the LIBA Award for Corporate Citizens due to its ethical social conduct. UltraTech is now ranked 7th globally in the construction sector by the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and the current score is 79. And it's also reflected a great improvement in scores because of the efforts they've made, and the overall improvement is 42.7%. So that's some wonderful work done by UltraTech, and also shows that companies, when they have a focus, can drive the actions across the supply chain here. The second sub-pillar is empowered, diverse, and inclusive boards here. And normally we spoke about the social bias last time. And again, here is where you can see female directors are more likely to see ESG's connections to strategy and prioritize climate change, is what the PwC reports. And in Asia, the board seats held by women has increased from 7.8 to 11.7%. There's still some way to go, of course. The percentage of women in the Indian boards is 16.8%. So an inclusive board gets in diversity in thought and looks at all these elements of diversity, which could be gender, race, ethnicity, etc., etc. The graph on the left bottom shows that the industries with the highest percentage of women in the board in Asia, the top industries, and if you say life sciences, this obvious one, you can think of some familiar names there. It's improved from 9.3 in 16 to 14.2 in 2021. And in financial services, from 9% in 16 to 13.8 in 2021. And energy and resources also see a good increase. You know, it's not so clear, 7.6 to 13.1 is what it says here. So the graph on the right talks about the elements. What are the elements? What are the key elements there to creating diversity in the boardroom? And across a survey of 646 directors, the top elements they considered, and again, it's a very interesting survey there because of all the elements that you have in what we call diversity. It's not their gender, like we said. It does, of course, take top spot, 88%. It's also race and ethnicity, which takes 83%, age is 79, and of course the board tenure is 74, and the socioeconomic background gets in 58. So very interesting insights on the PwC survey on what are the, and we talk of diversity, what exactly does diversity really mean for them and what's most critical to them here. So in the local context of India, the Indian Companies Act has made it mandatory for the Indian companies, listed companies, to have at least one female director in the board of directors. That's been 1 year. And since then, there's been a lot of transformations, expectations, as you see in the BRSR. We take you some of that in the end of the session here. And you can see the average number of women in the board also has seen a change across industry there. You can see a little bit of connect there. You can see life sciences you spoke about, and we spoke of various sectors there. An interesting case study here, friends, to bring this point to root is Godrej Consumers Private Products Limited. So Godrej has 5 of the 14 board of directors, 2 of them from Africa. As you can see, the diversity spans continents. The matrix, the skill matrix displays diversity of perspectives of priority. So it's embedded diversity, starting, of course, with the board. That's a great place to begin there. It's got a policy and it has onboarded international directors to get an understanding of its market better. A couple of interesting quotes there. Iriana Vittal said, women bring a different lens, look at it differently, right? You know, there are the biases we need to cut through. They know also how to call out unconscious biases there. And you know, it's interesting there, the perspective, I think the directors have said a lot of things here. The insights they get, and one of their drivers was to have more representation of women independent directors. And I guess that's what Godrej himself said. And getting, like we said, expanding the geographies also help them. So diversity is not only providing another narrative, but also provide the context, the contacts, the connections and introductions to the ground here. And it gives the depth to the discussions, you know, that even reading a newspaper doesn't. So decisions are superior. And you can see that this is reflected in the trends, the average number of women in the boards. It's a great example and a great leading indicator of how diversity does work well. And this connects well with what we spoke in the last masterclass about the social element there. The third sub-pillar is, of course, managing risks through ESG governance, the most critical one here. And this speaks about how managing risks is essential for avoiding disruptions to ensure business continuity there. 76% of the consumers say they'll discontinue relations with the company if they treat their people inappropriately, if they treat them poorly there. So this is something that's also come across well. It's a need for staying in business and is a key driver for excellence also, and of course, business continuity. The SEBI in its LODR has wanted also, I think some of you might be aware of this, and there's a lot of trending in the industry around what is the expectation, try to understand it. The LODR states that the top 1,000 companies, apart from having to report on the BRSR, need also to identify the risk to the entity, to also have appropriate mitigation measures, and to evaluate if these are appropriate here. So this again, and the amendments of the LODR in 2021 now require them to do all of this apart from the BRSR here. So the ESG risk reduction actions has also become an interesting theme, and integrating ERM, and we spoke about the materiality, the heat maps of these need to also integrate in some ways there. So the ESG risk reduction targets of companies need to allocate times, budgets to assess ESG risks and of course the impacts there, and to analyze how ESG fits into the current risk infrastructure. A lot of companies do some stuff, and we spoke about the environmental, and they do actions on carbon, water, and waste. Is it a risk? They need to connect the dots, right? They said the fourth bottom line after the people, the planet, and the purpose is the purpose, and the planet and the profits is the purpose. So connecting that to the purpose is so critical. So analyzing how ESG fits in with the current risk infrastructure is an imperative. It also specifically requests stakeholders to, including all the legal, financial, and the internal audits to influence the process, how they influence the process. And that's how enterprise risks also has come into play in a large way. And looking at risk management is therefore a critical pillar of governance here. A good example here is L&T, which seeks to do a comprehensive risk management, and the board of directors do confirm the risk management policy of the group, and the reviews, and you can see the graph on the right, does it in a very comprehensive manner where it's cascaded top down, and it looks at sectoral developments, looks at market, financial, geographical, political, economic risks here, and reputational ESG risks, including the risks of cybersecurity. So managing risk has become one of the expectations and now a mandate from the SEBI here. It also, therefore, is no wonder that the L&T was the Firm of the Year trophy for the best risk management practices there. So going forward, you'll see a lot of enterprise risks coming to play when we speak about ESG, and that is where this comes in from here. So it also is about managing risks efficiently. Managing risk wisely is also not just, it's a business call here. And there is various levels of how you would represent it. So the maturity of an organization also speaks about how its ability to manage risks is reflected there. There is the minimum practice, that's the basic, and it talks about mitigating risk and doing no harm is where it starts with. Then there is the common practice, which has efforts mostly outside the core business to track major trends, to use trends to deliver on the ESG metrics, to create a comprehensive overarching policy, to be inclusive in the way that all the policy is done, and to also look at philanthropic efforts and engaging the stakeholders groups. But the next level practice is that Hutke kind of practice. The full integration of strategy into ESG and operations is what's critical out here. So this is the other big element, this is the big part of it, where the expectation is for this to happen, they need to leverage all of the, it talks of the mega trends here. How do you ensure that you use, in the examples of your superpowers to increase the social impact, and how ESG as a differentiator to the core strategy can work well, how this can be a game changer in the industry, how they can be embedded, how ESG is used to ensure that, it's for employee evaluation. So all this has come up very critically, and this is where you can talk of the maturity that you have. The maturity of industries across time is what drives this here. And when you look at this on the trends from the managing risks to the impact, you can see the next level practice will reflect on the maturity of organizations and reflect the progress there. So again, this is something that will be interesting there. And the LODR from the SEBI has also been game-changing in some ways, apart from the BRSR. Let's see how this pans out. We can see that this is going to be the lens by which governance will be measured there here. Coming to this relevant to this tech webinar, responsible tech, data privacy and information security. And this is essential, and I've been part of a lot of what is being done on this sector here. So data privacy and data security, a lot of emerging metrics that looks at a lot of personal data that's being collected with the company and the likelihood of data breach accounting. You have a lot of information and things floating around here. Data privacy is also fundamental human right as per the UN Declaration of Human Rights. To ensure the data is kept safe, every company needs to comply with the standards like the GDPR, the Indian IT laws, also the IT Act, and the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2022 also requires this to happen here. There is, and I've been also happily been in touch with Infosys, done some work for their social network, assessing the suppliers globally on how the Infosys data privacy governance framework works. And I know that they do things well in their efforts to strengthen the what they call the PIMS, the Personal Information Management System, how they look at personal information. It's one of the few organizations globally, folks, to actually align with the national and global standards there. They're certified and accredited to the ISO 27701, the Privacy Information Management Standards there. And the Infosys Data Privacy Office helps the entire industry standards, including the Data Security Council of India and the global standards there, to look at data privacy, draft policies, and also take the entire supply chain through that. It also is connected with the standards that's changing, that's happening, that's in the EU also, and to ensure that appropriate cross-border data transfer is also managed in a manner that is seamless without any risk to the organization. This is how Infosys, with all that they do, embedding privacy by design, is worked well. And there is a lot of connects where they have, participants connected with privacy leaders, CPOs, global frontline practitioners. And in 2021, the good news is there's been no complaints received concerning breaches of customer privacy, which across the entire network of Infosys is big. And that's only possible because of their efforts in the personal information management system that the lever is there. So it's an interesting case study that talks about how one of the giants, Infosys, has managed data privacy and security out here. This one is interesting connect with the social. The stakeholder engagement and rights is so key here. So what does this speak about? And this is about considering stakeholders as potential risk bearers or beneficiaries. And you can remove the quotes of Jamshedji Tata that said stakeholders are the primary reason that we are in business. Stakeholder rights is about the right to accurate and timely information also to companies' disclosures, and of course to report instances of violation and to provide appropriate compensation in each of these here. So you can see this graph out here by Preston and Sachs, that there is at the basis the corporation, and there is the entire connects of the stakeholders, and how does each of these work well is what is the key part out here. That's the interesting case study of Manila water company case. If you're aware of this, this is a company that has showcased how stakeholders can revolutionize a business. How did they do that? So what did they do? So the Manila Water Company won a concession for water and wastewater services for East Manila. And earlier, before they really got into the privatization, only 60% of the households actually received water. What they did differently was they launched a walk the line campaign by actually engaging stakeholders, by having people, their own employees, visiting all the customers face to face, including those in informal settlements there, to help organizations and residential cooperatives, installing mother meters across communities there. And this is how the Manila Water Company's customer base grew drastically out. You can see the increase there, and how the customer satisfaction went up from 3% to 96% is an outcomes of the good work they did at stakeholder engagement there. So this is the other interesting part of what has happened there. Closer home in India, folks, we also have learned from this good practice there. This campaign, while it was successful here, there was one that was launched at India. The Delhi Jal Board in they call the DJB also replicated this fantastic Manila practice there and did a walk the line campaign where 3,000 of their staff here of the DJB, ranking from junior engineers to members, including the water secretary, they actually walked the entire length of the pipeline network, doing a kind of Bharat Jodo. So that was an interesting example of how you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can take a good practice somewhere, but actually physically engaging with the stakeholders, be it in a march like we just spoke about, or in a way of meeting the stakeholders, also is a great way of leveraging the stakeholders and engaging them proactively. And what helps the company progress is absolutely visible out here. One of the elements, and you'll have hearing this also about executive performance and board independence. One is of the performance of the board independence, and let's see what this talks about here. So here again is a nice point here that talks about why, and there's a lot of family-run boards there, and you can see that the reason that policies come up is to ensure that there are independent directors who have no direct or indirect relationship with the company, and you're not really involved in the daily activities. So we spoke about avoiding conflict of interest. In terms of governance, there's been a little bit of efforts to ensure that by design, this is taken care of. So 1/3 of the members of listed companies in India need to be independent. This is the first unbiased voice in the times of a crisis, and you can see why this is so critical. After a couple of events has happened in other listed companies there. So the Standard & Poor 500 companies are increasingly also tying the executive pay to ESG performance. So one is the independence, and second is about performance there. So what's the interesting trend there? There is also the factors that drive the inclusion, and you can see various parameters there. Though it's still not so high, frankly speaking, in APAC, where most of the audience in the call is from, only 16% of the listed companies, actually of the top 50 companies, actually link ESG performance to executive pay. So we said ESG still needs to have a big play in the boardroom. But you can see on the graph on the right, the factors that drive the inclusions are, and you can see that the ESG is a priority or a core value, as you see over time, is coming up, and a lot of expectations. You know that when you talk of governance, all these is largely coming from investor expectations. It's where the entire journey of ESG has began, the evolution, and how achieving ESG progress and ensuring commitments also plays a big part in governance there. As we speak, I'm wearing a Tata hat as we speak. This is a case Tata Group, and each of the group companies, fairly mature companies there, the Tata Steel, Tata Motors, Tata Consumers, Tata Consult, and Tata Power, ESG is top priority on the management team's deliverables. How they link ESG to the variable pays of the directors. Some of them may be mentors and colleagues in the past as part of what we've done in the Tata Group. And I've been part of the Tata Sustainability Group, where, and as Sanjeev Paul says, sustainability is the top 4 business objectives of the organization. So there is one of them is business excellence, and is also connected with that. One of the most important subjects for the senior leadership team, and it's part of the KRA as well for the KRA down the line, cascaded very well across each of the Tata Group companies. One of the best stake company case studies there. So you see the survey output also indicating that to all the stakeholders that ESG is a priority, the biggest reason why boards are linking ESG goals to executive performance out here. So here are, and again, you can take a guess on why this is so, why the sectors most likely to link ESG and performance. And very interesting there, I will you to analyze why the conference board has done this. You can see that 100% of the utility sector, we spoke about Tata Power and a couple of renewables here. You can see that utilities energy seem to be, and of course, you can also connect it in some ways with materiality, or where the opportunity is most to connect ESG with performance there. So you can see that's the really biggest drivers. The top 3 are the estate and the power sector there. So the interesting insight on where, and this is based on the top 455 Standard & Poor's 500 companies there. We speak about a lot of what's happening around this very topical ESG and reputation risks. What is this all about? And you can talk about various things here, but there are some examples that come to mind. Typically, the big ones, I've been there, done that in BP, where the US Deepwater Horizon, the mega spill that had British Petroleum receiving 53.8 billion in fines there. Some of you might have bought this beautiful car, the Volkswagen. There was a charge and a penalty of 27.4 billion euros for rigging the diesel tests here. And recently, Cambridge Analytica, what did they do? They harvested the personal data from millions of Facebook users, resulting in billions of loss in market value there. Recently, you must have just heard, their Facebook parent, Meta, as you'll see in your WhatsApp University, has agreed to pay 725 millions to settle a privacy suit over Cambridge Analytica there. And this proposed revelation, how does it come through? This happened in 2018, where this came through, was that 87 million people's data would have been improperly accessed by a third-party firm, which went on to file for bankruptcy again later. The largest recovery ever in data privacy action, and the most that Facebook had to pay in a private class action there. And I think this is something that was very interesting, but you can see that reputation risk is closely linked with what industries and companies need to manage here. So as per the theme out here, what is it that investors really look for in ESG data? What are the challenges? What are the approaches? What are the key focus areas? And we said that the entire journey of ESG began with investors. And this is where we need to understand what actually constitutes investment grade data. And these are some of the parameters which also are relevant for ESG reporting. The data needs to be accurate and transparent, needs to be complete and consistent, needs to be relevant. The scope of the organization, the purpose, the boundary condition, all need to be relevant, right? It's not something that you want to put in something in a coffee table book. It's got to be fit for purpose. It's got to be relevant, and there shouldn't be any greenwashing is what they say. And therefore, that's why it needs to be auditable and verifiable. As you're aware, as an interesting tidbit, there is also the BRSR that they've done a pilot on assurance, which is also now the expectation of most reporting frameworks there. So what are the investment grade data that you're looking at? What is the critical ones? Let's have a quick look at that here. So investors, and we say when invest in a share or a scrip or a mutual fund, you obviously do some research and understand, what is it that will make the company sustain. And today we are in the third leg of the ESG deep dive. We spoke about environment, we spoke about social, we spoke about governance. We also spoke about some issues that happen, some reputational risks which can damage and bring down the share value. And how is it that investors analyze it? How do they make decisions? We also said in the first section that ESG is a tool for decision making, looking at each of these three to understand whether a decision is from the governance framework, is it viable? You're looking at return on investment, you're looking at profitability, you're looking at managing risks, you're looking all of that, and of course, compliance at the bottom line. And we also said for a decision to be sustainable, it also needs to fit the social bottom line, how it impacts the community, how it impacts the people, the health and safety, diversity, inclusion. And that is where you'd wear the hat of a CHRO and ensure that decision is equitable. And then, of course, we began with environmental. We said must look at the material intensity, the water intensity, looking at how effective it is on the operational excellence of the unit there, the company there, and wear the hat of the COO to understand if the decision is bearable on planet Earth. So look at this. How do investors really analyze that? Easy to say, take this triple filter test to decide. How do investors get the data? How do they analyze it? So largely investors try to get ESG data from the ESG reports there. They ask, of course, when there is a report that is done, when there is a disclosure, like we said, it's a double-edged sword. Any business analyst, any investor would ask consistent questions to companies across industries. They do a benchmarking because there's a lot of information now available on the public platform thanks to the disclosures there. So ESG reports is where people look at various frameworks. It could be the GRI, it could be the SASB, to understand and identify the material risks there. ESG ratings, we'll speak about this in the last masterclass, and that's one good way, and everyone has different parameters, but the MSCI Sustainalytics are third-party ratings where a lot of 68% of investors use ESG ratings for their investment decisions. And finally, of course, there is various other opportunities there, how companies look at that, a mixed approach, where investors take a balanced approach using multiple sources, all of the above, as they say, and they can also spot outliers in verifying the ESG information there. So if you take one platform, you take one approach, it just needs to be calibrated there. So the mixed approach is one of the best ways by which investors analyze data out here. So very interesting kind of insight out here. And this is what constitutes really investment grade data out here. Benchmark Digital also has done a couple of surveys where they said that the last year, they said that investor attitudes on company ESG data reveals that investors define the importance of investment grade ESG data. So investors largely, we said, agree on what really makes companies ESG performance truly investment grade. Investors are largely educated, well educated, as they say, and the attributes of this data is kind of sinking in that say that ESG data must be timely, accurate, complete, auditable, and reliable, as you said. This is the value of investment grade data. It reduces operational cost, it minimizes risk, it increases the brand equity, it informs the corporate strategy, and of course, the reward and risk that goes with it. I guess the investors say the one barrier is the lack of digital tools, but I guess there's a lot of institutional investors pushing for more aggressive corporate action. And I guess looking at the devil is in the detail, as they say, looking at the footnotes where folks might be running loose on the facts also is important. There's a lot of skepticism on what is being published there, but like I mentioned, the assurance is coming in, gives a feel that the quality and the completeness of the report will be objective and more likely to be used well here. So that, friends, is, I guess, the summary. As we always do, we'll share a couple of platforms, a couple of interesting platforms, and the frameworks that connect best with the governance here. So what are these platforms there? The one closer home is the BRSR. The BRSR from SEBI is, like we said, a compliance and communication tool, a reporting framework, and it goes around the national guidelines for responsible business conduct. And what are the principles that's connected most with governance? It's largely principle 1 and principle 7. These are the relevant governance principles there, where we spoke about ethics compliance. The first principle requires that businesses should govern in an ethical, transparent, and be accountable. And the principle 7 also talks of policy advocacy and regulatory policy to be responsible and transparent there. What is this other one here? We spoke about the SASB in one of the earlier master classes. So the IFRS is the International Financial Reporting Standards, and this alliance that came through, which is the not-for-profit public interest organization. It was basically established to develop globally accepted standards on the accounting standards, that's the ISB, and the International Sustainability Disclosure Standards Board for the sustainability there. So SASB forms part of that. And the interesting other insight is that the entire framework is being folding into the International Sustainability Standards Board that is developing, as we speak, a global framework, which will get a global baseline that will meet investors and assessors a good opportunity to assess the enterprise value in an integrated way. But the SASB is part of the IFRS. It's an ESG guidance framework, and it looks at the metrics that focuses on business ethics, competitive behavior, the management of legal and regulatory environment, the critical incident risk management that's critical to incident risk management, and of course, the systemic risk management is what it talks about here. The most popular framework for reporting still remains the GRI. So the GRI, of course, is a flexible reporting platform that looks at each of the triple bottom lines very well here. These are the topics that comes in as part of the 100, 200, 300, and 400 series. The ones that's most relevant to us, to governance here today, is the GRI 205, the anti-corruption one. 206 looks at anti-competitive behavior. 415 looks at public policy. 17 and 18 looks at marketing and labeling and customer privacy. So these are the ones largely that look at how companies can focus on the governance as part of the reporting frameworks there. So friend, that's a great context and connection. And we'll also then look at how we can use technology as an enabler, as a driver to business transformations and ensure that governance works well here. Over to Ayush.
Thanks a lot, Shankar. Can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, perfect. Give me a second. Yeah, so thanks a lot, Shankar, for that amazing bit. So folks, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to connect some of the important aspects that Shankar just spoke about with how an organization manages these governance aspects using digital, right? In my next slide, here, I want to talk about how technology acts as an enabler for corporate governance. So obviously, it helps collate, compile, and analyze data for you, based on which the management can look at taking calculated risks as well as decisions. Tech also enhances communication and easy collaboration amongst the stakeholders. The third point being that you don't actually have to wait for things to get worse before you act upon it, right? So you can monitor your operations and performance real time and take necessary steps at the right moment itself. This is basically a damage control that you can actually do using a digital tool. In today's scenario, you know how difficult it can be for an organization to manage the regulatory compliances coming in from every angle. It is coming from a country level, from a local level, state level, as well as your own internal practices as well. So that is also where a digital tool can really help you seamlessly tackle it, right? And at last, it also helps in designation of accountability and bringing in transparency in your management system. And talking about transparency, that is one of the key to the corporate governance of a system. If we see at a larger perspective of the corporate governance landscape, it majorly talks about managing your regulations and operationalizing your compliances. It also talks about managing your enterprise-wide risks to flag anything which poses a risk to your business continuity. And finally, managing your corporate governance data and disclosing them in a timely manner. It has to be done at the same time with ease and accuracy. So that's another very important aspect. On the right, we have few tools which majorly help you to digitalize these processes And in the interest of time, I'm going to briefly touch upon a couple of them in the demonstration next. We are going to talk about a tool called Reg Auditor, which basically facilitates conducting compliance audits using established country or state, local, or your own company specific regulatory checklists through assignments. We are also going to talk about compliance calendar, uh, which is a tool basically used for operationalizing the requirements by creation of a one-time or recurring task and assigning them to the right responsible people as a calendared task. And you can look at monitoring and managing them till the closure. We will also talk about risk registry, which basically enables users to identify, create a repository, and mitigate any sort of enterprise-wide risk, which can be material or crucial for the business continuity. And finally, we are going to touch upon ESG Director, a tool which has also been briefly touched upon by me in the previous sessions and is the benchmarks disclosure reporting tool. And today, what we are going to cover is we will be talking more on how to manage your corporate governance related KPIs using the ESG Director tool. Right. With that being said, I'll quickly move to the demonstration platform that we have, and what you're seeing right now is the home page from where basically you can access all these tools. So I have the windows for all these three tools opened already in my screen. The first one is the Reg Auditor. Now, this is a tool which will enable you to access the checklist, which is built in line with the regulations or laws by your team, right? It can be done by your team by working with us, or we can also look at engaging the right content partners, say partners who are experts with regulatory compliances in India or regulatory knowledge in India. We can engage them as well for creating these checklists. And once you have created these checklists, you can quickly go to the site applicability screening and see if these are applicable to your site, right? The site that I'm using right now is say Los Angeles. So you can quickly check how many of these checklists are actually applicable based on the statutory norms for your particular site. And if it is applicable, you can tag it to the right relevant department and schedule an audit by assigning auditors with a due date. Right? These auditors can again use these checklists. So let me quickly just open a checklist as well, which the auditors can basically use to conduct these audits on the statutory part. This particular checklist that you're seeing, it has around 12 sections, and each of these sections will have multiple radio buttoned questions as well, based on which you can conduct the audit. And if you find out an observation or a non-compliance, you can select the non-compliant portion here, and from where you can quickly look at exporting this particular non-compliance with a description of finding and corrective action to another tool called action tracking system, where you can tag it to a right responsible person with a due date so that he can also completely monitor and track it till the closure. So thereby, the tool will basically help you to understand the current level of compliance to the regulations. And if there is any sort of non-compliance, you can look at tagging that to the right person and tracking it till the closure. The next application that we are going to talk about is compliance calendar. Now, maybe you have compliances, or regulatory requirements coming in from OSHAs or OIST standards or Factories Act, labor laws, etc. Or in fact, there might be some internal committee meetings or management walkthroughs to which there is normally a deadline, which is very, very stringent, and you do not wish to miss on those deadlines at any cost. So that is exactly where a compliance calendar tool comes handy, which is where you can basically create a one-time or a recurring task by adding a new task. You can key in all the relevant details for that particular compliance or the task. You can also tag it to a right responsible person. You can set the frequency of this task as well so that it gets auto-generated the next time based on the frequency that you set. The responsible person can also key in his in progress notes and close this particular task once it is completely fulfilled. right? You can also look at adding a verification process or a toll gate where you can add a authorized verifier for this process. And once the person who is responsible for completion of this task, he submits this as closed, it pops an automated email to the verifier who will then come into the system, check everything, and if he's satisfied, sign this off, right? And at the end of the day, you would be able to manage all your compliance related tasks in a very easy manner from a calendar format that you see here, which can be again set up based on days or weeks or months or multiple months for your particular site and monitor them till the closure seamlessly. The third application that I'm going to talk about is the risk registry. And this is a module which many of our current subscribers are using to basically create a repository of enterprise-wide risks and prioritize the significant threats to the business continuity from a governance or corporate governance perspective. You can also look at adding a new risk to the repository by keying in some of the basic risk-related details, by giving it a quantitative value and finding out the risk metrics for that. You can also tag in the control measures and assign a person as the risk control owner as well, where he will be responsible for making sure the control measures for that particular risk are always in place. Right. Once you have keyed in all the basic details, you can look at adding this to the repository. And once the repository is created, you can, from the summary page, you can very quickly look at your top risks from the governance, economic, environmental, or social perspective as well. Right. You can also define different types of assessment types from the tab here on the top. So thereby, this will basically ensure that you address the right risks on priority and minimize the chances of affecting your business continuity. And overall, once you have streamlined and operationalized your compliances and governance risks, you can actually look at moving towards an absolute reporting of your governance indicators. And this is exactly where ESG Director comes into the picture. So what you're seeing on the screen is the homepage of ESG Director. And if I go to the system management and click on enterprise KPIs, this is where you can see that we have already pre-fed almost 700 plus KPIs, which are coming from environmental, social, and governance aspects, which are again in line with the global and local frameworks like GRI, SASB, TCFD, CDP, as well as BRSR. On the bottom, you can see all of these breakdowns of individual KPIs and material topics under each of the ESG portfolio. If I click on governance, I can see all the material topics under governance. I can, as an organization, select and choose if it is a material topic to me. I can also key as no and add a materiality basis for that. Right. I can also look at filtering out all of these KPIs based on the frameworks as well. So if I want to see only the KPIs, say under BRSR, I can do that. And once I've done that, I can also look at drilling down to each of these KPIs, looking at it from the details, and also tagging it to the right program area manager. This will be the person who will be responsible for disseminating these KPIs to the sites inside your organization. And one quick thing that I wanted to just highlight here is, say, I want to take an example of this one KPI, anti-corruption set of parameters. Now, anti-corruption is KPI or the disclosure which is being asked under section 205 of GRI, as well as 510 of SASB, as well as this is also a requirement under essential indicator of principle 5 under BRSR as well. And this is where our internal team of experts have also done a homework of mapping each of these KPIs to relevant requirements under global standards, so that you need to key in the data just once and it can be reported out on any of these global frameworks. Right. So that's the quick digital bit that I wanted to cover, starting from So starting from how you can manage your regulatory compliances by setting them up as individual tasks, and then using checklists to audit them and identifying the non-conformities, managing your enterprise risk as well as ensuring business continuity. And finally, when you're sorted with all of that, you can finally look at using a digital tool for, again, helping you to line up all your corporate governance parameters in a single place for a seamless disclosure reporting experience. Before handing it over back to Shankar, I saw a question here. I think it was from Prayag about whether for the apparel and fashion industry, can benchmark tool be a good starting point? So definitely yes, Parag. It can definitely be a good starting point, as we are currently catering to more than 35 plus diverse industries already. So and it has been ranging from textiles to oil and gas to multiple other industries currently. So in case you are also interested in knowing more about the offerings that we have, please let us know on our website as well. You can contact us through our website. And with that, back to you, Shankar, for the key takeaway section.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Ayush, for a wonderful insight, a great platform. A couple of more people have wanted to connect with us. Peter from the CRDB Bank wants to understand, Bimlesh wants to drill down and understand financial. Happy to sort out and set up a demo there. Sambat asks if the regulatory audit scopes global parameters in the, yes, of course. And of course, as we spoke in a couple of sessions, it's got a mapping with the BRSR and all the international frameworks. So as I said, if you can do one of those, there's a nice way by which the benchmark digital tool can help you do it all, connect with all the other platforms there. Shama was asking Ayush if we have a supplier ESG assessment framework. And I guess, yes, we do. I guess we showcased it. If there's any other platform that on popular demand needs to be showcased, we'll do that in the 5th masterclass there. So hang on until then. So right, friends, thanks for your interest. There's been a barrage of questions, but let's look at the key takeaways before we head to the questions there. So what then have we learned today on the governance, the most important framework, the imperative framework as we speak here? So one, governance drives all aspects. It's a driver, right? So about the strategy, the operations, reporting is all driven by the governance. And that's why it's critical to both the E&S execution. The metrics largely includes the organization's ethics, compliance, data privacy policies, the board diversity and inclusion, and more. How do you manage effectively the ESG risks and reputation is critical. And across the ESG factors, it's critical for the board to enable and empower efficient risk and reputation management programs. You also see how various regulatory agencies, including the SASB, so the LODR, have made risk management key here. The theme of this webinar was about how investors look at investment grade data on ESG. And we give you a couple of examples and we'll deep dive into how the ratings really work. And also you've seen across the frameworks how the ESG reports help investors to engage with companies to obtain information and insights that will help them make decision-making on investment grade ESG data. That's why it's so critical here. Yes, digital tools. So there's a question from Sandhya saying IT is so low in the entire framework of ESG, but you've seen and well explained by Ayush how digital tools can really ease your governance reporting journey and how this staying on top of compliance, leading rather than lagging, will create powerful ESG progress and also ensure that reporting and compliance manages well here. So friends, this was some of what we saw today in this session there. We still got a couple of minutes. We'll take quickly a lot of questions that you have. Yes, the most relevant question comes in from very topically Ram Prasad. Ram says, what is the connect of P&L with governance and ESG? So Ram, here's what we say. So what's this governance framework all about? Like they say, this is the one that links most to the CFO. So what do they look at here? They look at driving profitability, to look at profit margins, revenue growth, the return on investment, capital cost. And we're speaking about the investors, what appeals to them, the valuation of the enterprise, the economic prosperity and economic performance is what we're looking at again. So the P&L and profits is not a dirty word. It's most relevant to this particular bottom line. And that's why this is also called profits, if not prosperity there. Hope that addresses what you said here. Ranjan also says, how can we organization look at BRSR and closure tracking? So we'll also talk about that. I think we explained it in a couple of sessions, but yes, we will. This platform, especially what we're talking of, what Ayush just showcased, helps you stay on top of the corrective and preventive actions there. Apart from what Parag said on apparel, Shibu also, hospitality also, it works well here. I guess the other big question was from all of us on whether one of the questions on Shivaji on examples of some of the surveys on the utility and energy sector. Why is the linkage most high? It's a question we've kind of asked and answered also. Why it's more material to them. A couple of examples, of course, a survey that hasn't given so much of information on the source, but Tata Power is one of the ones that I can think of and connect well, where the performance of the leading team members or leadership is linked to ESG out here. A lot of you asked for slides at the recordings. You will get them. Swapna, if you haven't been through the earlier sessions, you can watch them, this recording, and we'll go through that again. Yes, you can actually, Alicia, would you like to take over? How people like Swapna who miss earlier sessions can watch the recordings and actually get the certificate.
Yeah, thank you, Shankar and Ayush for the session. And for everybody who's asked how you can go ahead and be eligible for the masterclass, you can scan the QR code on your screen below. They are QR codes that direct to part 1, 2, and 3 on YouTube. So please go ahead, watch the videos, and please like the videos and leave a comment as well. And then if you come back to part 5, and we also have an assessment after, and then you will have your masterclass certificate with you. And here you can also see a QR code. So if you'd like to register for part 5, you can go ahead and use this QR code and scan it as well. The links have also been added to the chat, so you can access those as well. So thank you for joining, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. And to all the questions that were not answered, you'll find them in the recordings. One of the questions came up from Vidya, the difference between ESG and sustainability. We answered that in the first session. Yeah, just to recap, sustainability largely looks at the environmental dimension, one of the terms that was talked about earlier. And we also speak about when ESG was finally come up. That's more holistic. And so the answers to all the questions you're asking, friends, folks, just go back to the entire series there. Please leave a feedback, your session comments, and be happy to take it when you do session number 5. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you, Alicia, for curating a wonderful masterclass. Thank you, Ayush, for a mind-blowing demonstration of what the tools and the platforms that can deliver investment-grade data, plus also deliver ESG. Thank you so much, folks, for your time. Have a wonderful day. Stay well.
Thanks a lot, Shankar. Has been a great opportunity. Thank you, Alicia, and everyone who has joined the call. Thank you.
Take care, folks. Don't forget the poll before you leave, the post-webinar poll, and of course, leave your feedback once again. Scan the code, register. See you in season 5.